Greetings. On the screen, you are looking at two individuals. The one in the middle is the late Graydon Jerry Parker, and he was a mentally ill, disabled 54-year-old veteran who was killed on May 21st, 2017, while in the custody of the Wayne County Sheriff Department here in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Now, the gentleman on the left in the corner is our current sheriff, Lawrence Pierce, or Larry Pierce, as he's affectionately known. And as the caption state, this is the man who was directly responsible for the death and the conditions that led to the death of Mr. Parker. Now, he has yet to be held accountable, nor has any of the deputies been held accountable for this and other misdeeds. And to my knowledge or my understanding, he has yet, to comment. He steadily remains silent. So, what happened? We're going to find out real quick in this quick video. Once again, I am Richard Taylor, the author of Blue Lights in My Rear View, which details many instances like this, highlighting the police brutality against people of color, but not only people of color, but all people, as we see in this instance, highlighting some of the instances in my hometown of Goldsboro, North Carolina. So what happened is on May 20th, Mr. Parker, who was a veteran, had a mentally ill episode where he smashed a window out of the truck of a neighbor. Now, when the police called, they arrested Mr. Parker, and he actually told them that God told him to bust the window out. Now, just that little statement right there should have alerted officers to the fact that this man is having some sort of mental episode. And even one deputy transporting him reported that during the ride there, Mr. Parker was mumbling some inaudible words. And also he had a 1,000-yard stare, meaning, he was staring off into the night like something was wrong with him. But despite all of these symptoms, when he arrived at the Wayne County Sheriff Department, the guards and the official treated him just like any other disorderly or drunk inmate, which means they mishandled him. What they did, they failed to give him a psychiatric evaluation to see if he needed help. But what they did was strip him naked. They beat him, they tased him, they shackled him, and threw him in a cell by himself after taking him to the shower and hosing him down with hot water and tasing him and, pepper spraying him. And they left him in the cell naked, going through his mental episode, and his condition, grew worse throughout the night. Now, as the night shift comes in, about 9 o'clock, they said, once again, Mr. Parker was still in the cell, naked, having a mental episode. So what he started doing was spreading feces over the window of the cell. Now, in response to this, the night shift officers once again dragged him back to the shower scene. They sprayed him down with hot water, and they began to beat him unmercifully for about 15 minutes, tasing him, pepper spraying him, and even hog tying him. And in the midst of all of that beating, that attack for 15 minutes, Mr. Parker became unconscious. And even when he was unconscious, the officer still placed him hog-tied in a cell by himself without supervision. Unfortunately, during some checkups, a deputy officer noticed that he was not breathing, and he had turned blue. Now, that's when they called EMS, and Mr. Parker was slightly revived, but he later died that day at the hospital. Now, of course, I can tell you about what happened, but it's also better to show you. So I'm going to pull up this article right here. Now, this article right here is from prisonlegalnews.org. So I'm going to read you some of this, if you can follow along with the mouse. Let me see. We're going to start off at the beating. Now, the response to Parker smearing feces on the cell wall and banging his head on the window was pepper spraying. He was again dragged to the shower area. He yelled when sprayed with hot water. Now, I'm going to read these names because this is also public record, but also people need to know about what deputy sheriffs and also who deputy sheriffs are who commit these acts. So guards Xavier Lee, Brent Woodall, Jose Arias, Robert Hines, and Nathaniel Neal then began attacking Parker as Trooper Charles Granger watched the civil rights complaint filed on behalf of Parker's estate claims. And we'll get into that claim later. But Parker was tasered on several occasions, hit with an electric shield as he lay on the floor, kicked, stomped, kneed, stomped, and placed in a chokehold over a 15-minute period as guards made efforts to hog tie him. Now, once again, the trooper Granger assisted in the hog tie effort, even encouraging the guards to quote unquote knock him out. And this knocking him out was achieved by tasering Parker several times while restrained as he laid on his stomach. And then once, even worse, now watch this. Once Parker was unconscious and hogtied, guards left him and made periodic checks until they noticed he was once again, quote unquote, turning blue and not breathing. When EMS arrived, the guards even have the audacity to leave the hog tie restraints on. So efforts were made by CPR to resuscitate him in the hog ties after the officers have done beat him to death. Now, this article, once again, is with Prison Legal News. Now, this shows the brutality, the heartlessness, the just outright disregard for human life that these officers and the trooper showed to our dear belated brother, Mr. Graydon Jerry Parker. Now, once again, those words give you a picture, but just let me give you the autopsy photos. Now, once again, this is from theappeal.org, which is another legal site. But we're going to start right here on the left. If you see right here to his head, if you can't read it, I'm going to read it for you. Follow the mouse. Bruising and swelling, swelling and bruising, lacerations, scratches, swelling and bruising, bruisings, all over his head and in his face. Now, I don't know what EJ 189 means, but if you see right here, even on the left side of his neck, it says bruises and a puncture wound, which means he was possibly stabbed or poked with a sharp object. You can follow all down his body, scars, abrasions, and even if you watch these lines here, you have a film line bruising and a cut. All of these are around his genital area, which means, the officers showed no regard to the man's private parts. Scratches, abrasions, even taser marks right here, bruises, all of those are very, very apparent with a just outright beating. Now look to the right here. Now we have the backside. Now this right here shows once again lacerations on his head, bruises, scratches, abrasions, and if you look right here, this part right here is his anus. Now, right by his anus, you see these two lines coming down. They say swelling and red. Now, what reason would the man's anus have to be swollen red if the officers did not, even perform some sort of sexual abuse on Mr. Parker? We don't know, but these pictures give us an in-depth look of what happened to the deceased mentally ill veteran. I'm going to go back to a part of this article because that's why the caption is as it is. Now, I'm going to read this right here. The lawsuit alleges that Wayne County detention officers, under the direct supervision or the direction of Sheriff Lawrence M. Pierce or Larry Pierce, ignored Parker's psychiatric issues. Instead, the officers responded to his anger by repeatedly pepper spraying him, kicking him, stomping on him, punching him, shocking him, and hog tying him. And once again, this man was beaten pretty significantly, as Mr. Sullivan said, who is the lawyer on his behalf. So that's why I say that the sheriff, Lawrence Pierce, is directly responsible for it, as this article says, because they ignored, under his direction, ignored Parker's psychiatric behavior. Now, the thing about this as well is that none of the officers were reprimanded. There were no criminal charges brought against any of the officers. To my knowledge, Sheriff Pierce has never spoken about this incident. And actually, I've received information that some of the officers involved in this death of Mr. Parker were actually promoted, given higher level positions. So this speaks to the overall culture of the Wayne County Sheriff Department, where they promote people who are directly responsible for the murder of human life and also the harming of others. So that's why I want to address this culture, because we've all seen the video of the Southern Wayne High School teacher, Anthony Williams, who was brutally assaulted by Albert Woods and subsequently was charged with some frivolous charges that have been dropped. But there is no fanfare for that. There is no apology by Sheriff Pierce. There is no condemnation of the officer's conduct by Sheriff Pierce, just this incognito silence. And I'll get back with that in a minute. But so what happened in this case? Well, the mother of Mr. Parker and her lawyers actually settled for $985,000. Now, two things with this, and this is the reason why I haven't heard of it, even though I was staying in Virginia at the time. This should have been something that I would have been aware of, or even national attention. But one thing with those lawsuits, especially of that amount, they have what they call a gag order, which means they say, we're going to give you this money, but you cannot talk about what we did to your relative. You cannot bring this incident up. You cannot talk about anything more of this incident once we pay you this money. And once again, I believe that that may have happened in this instance, because once again, I have not heard of it. Now, if any of you heard of it, please let me know in the comments, or even if you hadn't heard of it, please let me know in the comments. Now, the second thing many people don't know about these lawsuits is the Wayne County Sheriff Department doesn't pay these lawsuits. So where does that money come from? The money comes from the average everyday tax paying citizen. And the reason why these things are so hush, and I talked to an official the other day, and he told me, he said, man, Wayne County Sheriff Department gets sued all of the time. I was like, and I said, well, how often do they pay? He said, they pay every time. And so how much money have Wayne County Sheriff Department paid out for these lawsuits that are coming directly out of the pocket of the taxpaying citizens, where this money can be going to the betterment of the community rather than compensating victims of aggressive, corrupt, and brutal behavior by the Wayne County Sheriff Department? Now, that is a major issue why I am making, once again, this video, because people need to be aware of these things. They have all of these lawsuits, and the people are paying for these lawsuits out of pocket. Now, Sheriff Pierce is up for re-election. To my understanding, he is going to be running unopposed. Now, I don't know anything about law enforcement, but I do know right and wrong. And so if I would have known, I'd have been a write-in candidate, even to oppose this, because there's a culture, with this sheriff department of just outright immunity from public ridicule, public accountability, legal accountability in these actions. Once again, I've been targeted. There's a young lady who was punched in the face by Sheriff Deputy Taylor. There are so many instances that, the sheriff department has egregiously violated people's human and civil rights, but yet no one has held them accountable. So we want to hold them accountable in these actions. And lastly, there has to be some accountability by the head sheriff, which is Sheriff Larry Pierce. Now, he's been, once again, quiet, and all of these things due to whatever it is that keeps him quiet. So we want, I'm actually privy to some information that I'm not allowed to speak on yet, but he has been definitely quiet and avoiding of the people that he's supposed to serve. So once again, rest in peace to our brother Graydon Jerry Parker. Once again, I am Richard Taylor. I thank you guys for tuning in and watching this video. We're going to be giving you more videos, not only about little known cases in the Goldsboro area, but also in the world at large, because we need to know about these things that are happening, that things people that really don't know that are happening need to be exposed. So thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, if you want to, you can subscribe to the channel, you can like and share the video, but also I just want everybody to have a peaceful, blessed, and safe night, and much success in all